I've like mastered hand gestures. I can get a lot said through my hands.
Tell
Like if
us.
I need like a trash bag, for example, I'll just go trash bag, like trash, and I'm like, oh no, like it smells, right? Like, oh no, what do I do? And then they'll like show me, they'll be like, oh, like then it becomes like a context thing. They're like, oh, she could be asking about this. And then I'll either say, yeah, oh, ne, or año, because I know yes and no. And then
it's a good start.
Yeah.
honestly, a little bit of it is a little, I don't know. I do wish for as long as I've stayed here that I would have like learned the language. But every time I was going to learn, I was like, I'm only going to be here for a year. Like, what's the point? And it's been a while.
You live in a perpetual game of charades.
And I'm on my way, and I won't be late, 'cause everything that's happening is in perfect time. And though we may not know just where this bus will take us, but you're not alone.
Right. Well, I always find it interesting because I mean, at a certain point, it was just us being like, well, if we want to keep things normal, we just need to wear a mask and do these kind of things. Mm-hmm. But I was talking with somebody once and we were like, do you think this would fly in America? Like, do you think like people would be cool with this? And they were like, absolutely not. Like what we're doing right now is not anything that people would want. Mm-hmm. Like, so it didn't surprise me that America as a whole was like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, this is my right. I don't have to tell you anything. Like, I remember in the beginning, I was even a little bit like, why do you want my information? Why do you want to know
suspicious.
This?
It's like,
my American side came out. The American in me came out. I was like, excuse me. Like, I obviously, I'm like a guest at the country, right? So I'm just like, all right. But just know I'm not happy about this.
Let's cut the bullshit. Let's get down to it. Okay. You mentioned you're not surprised in America. Now it's just because this is gonna this is October 16th. So you have really seen the whole year now of this coronavirus go through the US. I didn't think we were gonna get right into the meat issues, but Elizabeth doesn't waste time. Elizabeth, what's it been like seeing it from Korea and just seeing America? The inverse.
It's been exhausting.
Dang, man.
It's honestly been exhausting. Like, yeah, like it's very common now that they're like, oh, you're from America, and they laugh. They'll just laugh. Yeah, because we're a joke.
That's what America's Sarah said too. She said the taxi driver like laughed at her.
They're like, but it comes from other foreigners too, like British people, like Australians, like things like that. They're just like, you guys have a lot going on. I'm like, looks like it, doesn't it? Like I take offense. I'm like, yeah, and you're doing well too, right? But no, America, it's just been exhausting. Like I remember in the very beginning, like before it like really hit, we were told like, oh, it's gonna come soon for them. Like it's gonna happen soon. And then when the government called it a flu, we were like,
wait, whose government?
American government. Like I remember like when I heard that it finally got to America, like it was being considered a flu, like not as bad, and you know, the flu even kills more people, things like that. And I remember thinking, oh no, they don't know. I was like, oh no. I was like, I've been dealing with this for at least 3 months now. Mm-hmm. This is not just a flu. And then I, you know, hearing more about like not wanting to wear a mask. Like I remember thinking, okay, I get that is somehow infringing on someone's rights in some way, if that's what you want to think it as. But I was like, but it is the best way to try to have a normal life. because of what I had seen here, where like everyone was wearing a mask, everyone was keeping a good distance for the most part. Like there was some people that were being a little ridiculous, but yeah. And then I remember I was just really upset that America decided to take the route that they did or the government in general decided to go the way that they did, because without us really knowing it, being abroad, I've seen how America does affect other countries in the way that they think. So like if America does something like this, they're like, oh, we can do the same thing.
Jeez.
Did you feel that in South Korea?
No, I do think that the president was like, no, we need to crack down on this ASAP. And I think it's just because Korea is such a small space that if you don't get stuff under control, like you're gonna have a real big problem. So no, I do think that the president here did a very good job with what he did. Like even so much as, just recently, it was a holiday and I was getting a little bit nervous because it was after their Thanksgiving here. And I was like, oh no, I don't want numbers to get up again. Like I don't want anything like that. And then there was a protest. There's this group of people that really don't like the president, and they're like pro-America and some other things, but like pro-Trump, not just America, pro-Trump. Anyways,
I didn't know.
South Korea.
I don't know a lot about that group, so I'm not gonna like get into it, but I just know that like that's what you see. Like if you go walking around like City Hall, you'll see like things that are like pro-Trump. Like Trump is like a picture thing, and it's just like, like, yay, America. And then they see you like, yay, America. And you're like, no, this is not it. This is not it. It's weird. It's like when you see it, you're like, oh yeah. You're like, yay, America. And then you're like, oh.
I'm falling apart over here. I literally, yeah. I know you said you don't know.
I wish I could. Because I don't really get it.
What them supporting another country's leader like does for them. How does that impact them?
I think it's just that their ideals are on the same route. I think it's just like their ideals are on the same wavelength. So they're just like, yeah, let's do that.
They want the president to follow what?
Something like that. Because they're also the group that like, there was a president that was pretty much kicked out of office here not too long ago, Park Geun-hye. See, again, I don't know all the details to these things. I should know a little bit more, but I try to keep away because as a foreigner, I'm not allowed to go to the protests. Like I would be kicked out essentially.
Interesting.
So I don't go protester. I'm like emailed even like there's going to be a protest. Don't go to this area. Anyway, so I don't know all the details. I can only like get certain things, but I know that they're the same group of people that are like, no, she should be in office. Our president right now, Moon, he's bad. He's trying to ruin Korea, that whole thing. So I know they're that same group. So who knows why they're pro-America? I think it's because all their ideals just kind of align, essentially.
Do you think?
What was I saying? I don't know.
Well. So you're saying their ideals are all sort of on the same line, right? So that means that by default they have more conservative views. There seems to be all around the world, honestly, whether we want to admit it or not, this little sect of. Well, I don't think it's that little of a sect anymore, but there's a big swath of people that are very adamant on a return to conservative values, whatever that looks like. But do you think that that's all because the world is getting smaller with the web? I remember also, the reason I bring it up is we had a conversation outside of this of a certain individual that was very deep in those beliefs, and it was sort of wild to see. And I was surprised that this individual was taking that route as well.
Yeah, I mean, I also just watched The Social Dilemma, and I think that brings a very good argument to that, right? Where it's like, yeah, I finally did, Natalie. I finally watched it. I
haven't seen it yet.
We were told to like watch it or something, or like recommended, and I was like, I don't want to watch it. I'm not ready for it. But then I became ready. It's a heavy one, I think, because it does go into detail about like how the internet has kind of given us our own bubble, right? So we only think like within that bubble, and then sometimes sometimes that conservative side will end up popping up with just even one like of something, right? It'll be like, oh, you like this, maybe you'll like pro guns, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? And then some people like, fall into it all.
And it's a rabbit hole, man.
Yeah,
every
like
link,
I've heard. Well, wasn't there like a basketball player that not recently, but in the recent past was like a flat earther, and then he ended up backtracking, was like, I am so sorry that I
know
that.
I know.
He was like, when you're like at 3 a.m. and you just like follow all the videos, and he said that was his reasoning for why he ended up believing that for a moment in time, because he had watched so many videos that he was like, I'm convinced.
The big,
even all the way on the left, there are also these rabbit holes that lead
yes.
to disasters, like situations like that. So it's happening on both sides, and I definitely see this like newfound nationalism bordering on fascism like happening in a lot of different countries, which is really scary.
I think, but like, let's think about it. My big question is it because of Trump, or was it bound to happen eventually because of the internet?
Yeah.
What did you say, Natalie? One more time?
I said, I think he's a symptom. I don't think it's I think this has been happening for quite a while. And like people haven't been wanting to speak about it.
Do you think he was able to like encourage people to be that way? Like maybe they had that thought, or maybe they had those feelings, but it wasn't kosher for some people. Dude. And now it's like he's just so loud about it that everyone's just like, yeah, I've been thinking that for so long too. Wow, you read me, you know me. And then it became like a love story.
When he was campaigning, one of the lines that was said over and over again was like, he just says it like it is. Like that became like a go-to reasoning for like why they support him. It's because he says it like it is. And I was like,
so I wasn't in America when he was campaigning, so I actually don't know a whole lot.
Dude, it was wild.
That. I remember whenever the election, like people were tallying up the votes and everything like that, and I remember my co-teacher coming up to me, and she was like, do you know that Trump is in the lead? And I was like, yeah, but he's not gonna win. That's just, I was like, yeah, this is just nonsense. And then at the end, when she came up to me, she's like, he won. I was like, what are you talking about? No way. Like, I remember I just needed like a day. Like, I was just like, I need the day.
Yeah.
I can't.
What was there more?
For me, it was shocking.
I remember the election night, I was in a house, and some of my roommates' friends came over, and slowly like the group just like intermixed as to like who could still watch this through to the end. And it was a random group. It was like me, my girlfriend, like a friend of theirs, and we were all had like a beer, and we were just like, what does this even mean? Like the conversation went from just like, it's going to be a crazy night, like we'll see 50-50 to like, where does our country go from here? What is the United States like really racist? Is it like really, really racist? Not just like a little, but like really racist?
But like, yeah, agreed. Yeah. I was just like, do I actually know my friends? Like, do I know people? Or
remember like a third of people didn't even vote because like Hillary. I think like now this election, I don't know if you've noticed the difference, but I feel like people are way more like you have to, you're not.
Oh yes.
Out.
So sure. my ballot last time got lost. And I was just like, well, I tried.
A mail.
It was a mail-in ballot.
That was my thing. I was like, well, I tried.
Uh-huh.
And this time I mailed it off, did the whole thing. And I've called 6 times to double check that it got there, because I got a message saying that it did. So the first time I called, didn't get to go through. Second time I called, talked to somebody. They were like, we can't find you. What do you mean? Third time I called, because no offense, she was like older, so I was like, maybe she didn't hear me right. So third time, again, I couldn't get through. Fourth time, I almost got through, but then we got cut off. And then finally at the end, called 2 more times, and they confirmed, yes, it has come in. And I was like, thank you. It was my whole night. But I was like, I need to know if this went through, because if not, tomorrow I need to go and send in there's like another form you can do that's like, just in case the other one, something happened, like you send this one off.
Interesting.
So like, otherwise I'd have to do that again. And I was like, and that's like a whole day. That's like me having to print everything out on top of like working. Then I have to rush off to the post office because they close at a certain time. I have to get it rushed there. Like, I was like, this needs to be done today. If it's not done today, it's a big problem.
But the mail-in.
So yes, I do think it's very different, because I was like before I was like, okay, I tried. This time I was like, no. There's no trying this time. It needs to either get there, or I need to figure out how to get it there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
If the mail-in vote worked all the way in Korea, it'll probably work pretty much everywhere else within the actual country where the vote is being counted for. So go ahead and vote.
Hopefully so, because Republicans gotta watch out for them.
Look, there
Have you guys heard that?
Okay.
Have you guys heard that in California, people, like different parties, are putting up their own ballot boxes?
Yeah.
Not like.
But there is a law to do that, but not the way that they're doing it. Like, you give it to your mom or your dad.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, I can't go. You should go do this for me. Yeah.
Drop this off for me or whatever. But like, they're just collecting mail.
Yeah.
And like, we have no idea what they're gonna do with it,
Yeah.
It's insane.
Dude, can you imagine? Okay, so when we all met in high school, the apprentice was like a thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine being like, some fucker comes up to you and he's like, this dude's gonna be president one day? You would have thought that person was just the biggest idiot, and you're like, your joke isn't even, what are you even talking about?
Well, The Simpsons thought it was, so.
Is that for real?
Yeah, The Simpsons, the whole episode is about how he was president. And then I can't remember which one, but then Lisa becomes president. She's like, so after the deficit that President Trump has put us in.
Isn't that a thing?
It's foreshadowed the future.
Do the Simpsons guess stuff? Like, I think they've had.
Yeah, they guess it. Yes.
They have stuff that's like.
No, they have someone inside. They had this done. It's like a big PR thing. It's really weird.
The Simpsons are all the answers. No. You're serious. Let's start our own internet rabbit hole about how all the universe's answers are.
I'm sure it already exists. I'm sure it exists.
Maybe. So what do you? So you said you actually decided to stay in Korea longer because Pandy Life Korean version a little easier than Pandy Life American version. What?
Yeah, it's also just a little scary in America, but yes.
Well, what happened? Is this election gonna decide how long you stay there?
This election will tell me whether or not I'm gonna go back. I've never seen myself really living in America for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see that changing, but if he gets elected again, I think video chats are just fine. I would like to visit. So that's what I would like to come out of this, like being able to go back without having to worry too much. Like, I know that's putting a lot on the election, but I do think that there is a lot more fear in my mind with going back with him being president. Like, I can only imagine like what chaos will ensue. And that only makes me worry for the people that are there. So.
It's just getting more and more aggressive. I think the difference between both, and that's what scares me the most.
Did you what was I gonna say? Did you hear about the almost kidnapping of the governor?
So I have
what the
not,
fuck is, or sorry, what the heck is that?
I know you can curse fucking shit, whatever. Yeah, I have not been able to bring myself to read that, because all I need to know is like, good, it didn't happen. Great. I don't want to know the details. I don't want to know, because that's going to freak me out a lot.
So you know how we're always like, oh, Florida, they're the weird ones. Yeah, no, Michigan, coming out of nowhere.
Crazy, man.
No, because they just recently, I just heard this morning that they recently banned that you can't have your rifles at the polls. I was like,
why would you bring it anyway?
Does Texas even let you do that? Like, I don't
choose your ballot. Like, that's how you're gonna mark
how you vote.
Like, I was just like, Michigan. I thought you guys were like, whatever. But what? Like, what's going on here?
It's
I don't know, man. It makes me wonder.
I mean, that's scary, because like, those are the poll watchers. Those are the Proud Boys. Dude, now the Proud Boys are gonna come out at us. But it's okay, we're not.
Like, the really scary part is that this group got together, created this plan because they didn't like their government official, like what's going to happen on November 3rd, or probably November, I don't know, a week after November
4th or 5th, yeah.
I'd be lucky if it's a week, man.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But like, can you imagine how many people have already like gone together to like talk about what we're going to do? And like, you have to trust the system. And I feel like so many people have stopped trusting that like things will just kind of move on. And that's what's really scary. Who knows what crazy people have decided to like start planning now.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what, there's times where I actually feel really a little hopeless, a little scared, just powerless. I think powerless. That's the word.
That's a really good word.
I feel really confused, because I don't really know what else I can do besides go out and vote, be active in my little community. Like, the actual division, the aggressive division, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that, except hope that the tone of the country changes. But like, what power do I have over that? I don't like feeling that powerless as well.
I don't think anyone does, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. I remember like that. I think that's a very good word, powerless. Like, especially as someone who's abroad, like when you hear about certain things, you're just like, what can I do? Like,
right.
Like I remember when the Black Lives Matter movement was really like hitting hard, like in June. I'm sure it's still like, showing its way now, but back in June when it really like hit hard, I remember it was really hard for me I was in a very dark place, because I was just like, well, what can I do? Like, I'm in another country, like, and I know other countries were doing protests and things like that, but I was like, are we even allowed to do that here? Like, if we protest, that's, you get in trouble. But then I was told that if it's against the government, then that's when that, like, there's like a little asterisk, right? Like, if you're going against the Korean government, then no, but otherwise it's okay. But like, the information on that was not very well spread out, unfortunately. And no offense to whoever organized it, but like, I was never completely 100% sure if the protests were even really allowed or not. So.
Like in Korea?
In Korea. Yeah, because I know that a lot of other countries were like showing solidarity, but like Korea, and even then Korea, like, I feel like as a whole, the whole culture has a long way to go, because like racism is very real here. I know it's in other countries too, but I think that like, and
have you ever experienced racism in Korea?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like I remember when I first got here, it's gone a little bit better, especially in my new neighborhood. Like I said, like people have traveled more. So I think that shows in how people treat me. But like when I first got here, it was very much common, like, where are you from? Like, what are you? Like, you're very exotic. I was like,
Ooh. Oh God.
yeah, the number, like, people will tell you, like, the number of people that would come up to me, like, they would think of it as flattery. They were like, oh, you're so beautiful. You're so exotic.
You're like, that's a microaggression.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
And I
You know,
was like,
exotic is a fucking
okay.
mango, and it's Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and then like, or like, because I have darker skin, like that's it's gotten better, like I've said, but they would be like, no, like, why? No. Like, I remember once I was tanning somewhere, and I was with one of my friends who was white, and they were like, why would you be tanning your beautiful skin? They're like, she already has it. So, you know, like, pretty much like, I'm done, you know, like, why would you want that? Don't, no. And I was like, ouch, I was gonna buy something from you, but now.
Wait, she said, don't get as dark as her. Like, watch
yeah,
it.
essentially she was trying to say, like, why would you want to be dark like her?
Dang.
And I was like, I am right here.
Yeah,
you're
that's
saying
not...
it in English.
I was gonna ask if you understood that through the charades hand motion.
No, that was in
English.
Straight.
She made sure that you heard it.
Yeah.
And I'm sunburn, bitch. Like, watch me and my beautiful brown skin.
And like I said, it has gotten better, but at the same time, that is very real. Like, I remember it made me hate Korea, because in America, maybe I was just sheltered or like blocked from it, but like, I never really dealt with racism. Not really. Like, you know, some things here and there, yes, but it was never anything where I was like, wow, I need to fear for my life. Like, the only thing I would say, like, before is like, I'm never going to Georgia. Like, that's what I would always say. Like, I'm not going to Georgia. I'm not allowed in there. No, thank you. And that was fine with me. Like, you know, it even became almost like a joke. But then here,
it's a big place.
I remember, like, it just, like, I would get yelled at. I would, like, people would like yell at me for, you know, not speaking Korean, or I would get yelled at for being here as a foreigner. Whereas, like, I had other friends who were white complected and, you know, blonde hair, blue eyed, and they were never said anything. Like, they just wanted to date them instead, you know? So it's very much like interesting. So I'm not the right foreigner, is what you're saying. So I remember that happened a lot. And I remember I was just like really angry, and it made me really dislike Korea as a whole. And I was just like, oh, Korean people are just all racist. And that was like me just like taking it really hard, right? But obviously that's not true. Like, I've taken some time to get there, especially because when I left Korea, it was like just a boiling point where I was just like, I'm tired of people yelling at me. I'm tired of, you know, being this other in some way. And then obviously it took like some therapy, like, for other things. But then now I'm in a point where I'm like everywhere is racist. Like, everywhere you go, unfortunately, there's going to be some sort of racism there, someone who is racist. That doesn't make the culture as a whole racist. That doesn't say that everyone you're going to encounter is going to be that way towards you. And if they are that way towards you, like, you know, you can just turn the other way, in a sense, here anyways. I'm not saying like everywhere else. Like, I think America, like, doing the protests, doing everything, being aggressive, like the way that some people would describe them as, I'm like, yeah, fair.
Yeah, I think that it's important for us to try to speak to other people, like, hey, that wasn't so kind. Like, you know, yeah, my skin isn't as light as yours, but it's my skin. But it's not our job, you know. Like,
yes,
if you're close to someone and you feel comfortable saying it, by all means, educate that person. But it's not something that you should feel like you have to in every space, because that's exhausting.
I agree. I actually, that's a very good point, Natalie. Yeah, I think that's a very big distinction that some people think, where it's like, if you don't say anything, how dare you not have said something? It's just, I think for me, I don't speak Korean, unfortunately. Like, that is something that is a bad thing that I should have probably tried to correct. Because I have been here for so long. But because I don't know Korean, I can't really communicate that to somebody. I can't just be like, hand gestures, I can't just be like, Me, okay, get it? Like I just don't know the hand gesture for that. So, in that sense,
do you
Okay.
yeah, right. Like I don't know.
do you ever get
Dark.
now? And I know you said that you didn't have necessarily that encounter, that type of encounter here in the U.S. until you left to
Well,
Korea.
not aggressively.
Okay. But do you think, like, now that you've gotten your career started, you've been in a whole different culture, does it I mean, you've been in Korea for so long, does it get exhausting? Like, you might have maybe come to terms with it, but does your mental exhaustion just, is that also a thing?
No, I think it's like I've said, I think Korea in a sense has gotten better.
Uh-huh.
Like I can't remember the last time that did happen to me since I've been back. Whereas I think like even 2 years ago, it was very common to find that sort of thing. Yeah, I don't know what's happened exactly, but maybe it's maybe it's even because I'm wearing a mask, and all they see is like my darker hair. Because like when you see me from behind,
Uh-huh.
I look like I could be Korean.
That's so
And
funny.
and even like
That's
even
Korean
now, this is going to
passing.
sound really ridiculous, and I know it does, but I have seen people see it. People will think like not even with the mask, like even when I didn't wear a mask, they would speak to me in Korean because it was almost like, oh, well, you're not blonde hair, blue eyed, you got to be Korean. You're just like darker skin somehow. And then I'd be like, my eyes. What? And they're like, oh, and then they would change it. But that would happen quite often where I'd go into a taxi and they would they would think that I was Korean. And then,
Is that
no.
weird in that instead of like white passing, you're like Korean passing? Because
It's weird. Yeah. And I don't, and it sounds weird to people that obviously know that I'm not Korean. They're just, like, they almost think I'm making it up. They're like, I'm like, no, trust me, this is a weird thing to make up.
Mm-hmm.
This happens a little bit.
I'm trying to just work my way through. You have light experiences of racism in the U.S., but you have such heavy-handed ones in Korea,
It's
and
weird, right?
it is just, it's a really unique experience. It really is.
It's wild.
Yeah. And it still had the same effect on you. Oh, my bad. What were you saying?
No, you're good. I think people don't realize how diverse Texas is, but one thing that I wish Texas did is like, hang out with different people more. I feel like everyone kind of lives in their own different bubble of race, and like there isn't enough like intermixing in Texas, which is insane because there are so many different cultures that live in Texas. At least that's how I experienced Dallas when I was teaching there. I don't know. I feel like we could do a better job.
I was going to say, I think, it wasn't, that didn't come onto my radar really, like, as that, because that's sort of true until I got to college. And then I really saw it. And it was honestly, I credit to our high school, which was more progressive in that way than I think I realized was unique. Because now, you look at some of the other high schools in that area, it's not like that at all. In college, I felt more different than I did in high school, for sure. Like aggressively so. Just a bummer.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think our high school, like, because I already had just a whole mix of friends that, when I got to college, I was just like, oh, this is normal. Like, what do you mean? And then when you talk to the people, like, you're like, oh, you only hang out with
whatever it is. Yeah, that was a unique
and you're just like, oh, wild. Like even now it's even carried to Korea where like I do have a pretty diverse group of friends. Unfortunately, I don't have any Black friends here, but it's because unfortunately they're not, like, I just don't work with any. I've never run into, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, we've never been in the same area.
What's the foreign makeup of
there's foreigners of all sorts, Latino women are harder to find. But otherwise, like, no, it's everybody. Like, there's Black people, there's like Americans, there's British people, there's Australians, there's Turkish people, there's Russians, because Russia's so close. It's very common for Koreans to go to Russia even. Like, there's Chinese people. Like, it's very diverse. It's just, as an English teacher, you need to be from certain countries to teach.
Sure.
Because they want it to be your first language, English. So that can sometimes happen. And it has gotten better, I think, with hiring non-white, blonde hair, blue-eyed people. Like, I know for a while that was very common. Like, if you were trying to get a job, they were like, oh, because on your application, your picture has to be on it so they can see you before they can accept.
Oh, that's
yeah.
That's the thing. That's
yes. And I remember there would be times when they would like your principal would lightly try to be like, yeah, this person isn't right. And they looked very qualified. Like, they seemed very qualified, everything, but they just weren't.
Have you had that conversation?
No. Oddly enough, that's where racism has not come into play with my life, where they're just like, what do we do with you? I guess you're okay. Yeah, sure. Because there are not that many Latin people here, at least that I know of, compared to other races, that they're just like, okay, yeah.
Well, you're so exotic, remember? So, well, but last thing then. 2020 has been buck wild, right? And you're gonna be we're talking to you right on the eve of another little wild hump, probably the life-defining hump for us here in a couple of weeks, right?
Oh yeah, sorry. For a moment, I was like Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween. The Halloween 2020 is gonna change.
Sorry, for a moment, I was like, okay.
What's gonna be your takeaway, man? When are we gonna see you again? How do you decide when to come back? What if you never come back? How are you going to describe what America used to be growing up here?
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, that was fun. I like to swamp people with the last one.
Well, I was just
Natalie
trying to think, what did I take away from 2020? I think I've gone through like a weird grieving like type of situation where like you go through the steps, or like at first you're like I don't know all the steps, but like you're in denial from them, you're really depressed, then you're angry about everything. And I think now I'm at the point where I'm more like trying to just be more positive about it, be like, you know what, if anything, at least now I'm much more active in with my country, like having to try that hard. Like 4 years ago, I didn't try that hard. Yeah, I did try, but when I found out that it didn't get mailed, I was like, well, I really can't. Sorry. And then, but also like being more aware of different things, like, like racism has become a big thing, like watching out for, like expecting your media to be more diverse, as opposed to like before, I'm like always hoping for a Disney princess, like growing up with Cinderella, like you think that that's it.
Is it?
Yeah. Now at least I have Coco,
Is it? I mean, yeah, Coco.
She wasn't a princess.
How dare you?
She's
a part of. No, she's Pixar, right? So I guess that doesn't count.
Half count. I feel the same way. I went through the same, I think, steps, but what I'm taking away from this year, which I wouldn't have expected at the start, is I don't have to take stuff related to that. Like, I don't have to settle, and I can make my own changes. And if something's happening that makes me feel weird or uncomfortable, I don't have to be subservient to it and be like, you know what? Fuck this. I don't need this.
You did cut in line. Excuse me, go to the back.
Yeah, I'm going to start telling people. That's my takeaway from 2020. I'm going to start telling people when they cut. I won't be able to, excuse me, sir. I was here first, if you could please. That's my takeaway. I'll speak up for myself in line.
Yeah. What about you, Natalie?
Oh boy. I wasn't expecting this, but my takeaway, I guess that's a really good one, to like speak up for yourself when you really feel like it's necessary. You know what's funny? I've also feel like I've gone through those same stages of grieving. I wonder how much of it was like the pandemic versus all of like the divisiveness of the country versus like, you know, the
For me, I think it was a mix.
The laundry list of shit.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just everything has just like brought everything up to the surface, and I wonder if we're grieving for like what America felt like when we were younger, and like how we're recognizing it's turned out now. Like I wonder if we're grieving for that like novice or naivete. I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Well,
Yeah.
I heard somebody say once that like it's not that we're being naive per se, it's more that we were taught certain things in our house, and when we've realized that the world wasn't at that same, like doing the same thing, we were just like, wait, what? And then, you know, it's been this other generation Z, that's been like, whoa, wait, what? No, we're supposed to do something about this. Like they've been taught that too, right? Like, whereas like we were educating that generation on like, this is what we were taught, but the world isn't like that. And
they're like,
were
why
just
not?
oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Our millennial generation, we're truth tellers, but we're cowards. We're not gonna.
No, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like to think that way, because like that's too hard on a generation.
That's
to say that.
That's
too hard.
Okay, I take it back. I retract it.
Well, I just think like it's our parents' fault almost.
Oh, have you guys seen that scene in Lord of the Rings where they like knock down the door and then the ones behind them go in? Like
yeah.
That's such a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
We knocked down the door.
Yes, and you use Lord of the Rings. A girl after my heart.
Was for the bad guys, but like, you know, we are not the bad guys.
Those were the orcs.
Well, I mean, I just feel like it's
specifically.
I feel like we can't be too hard on ourselves in that sense. Like, if we do that, we're just going to be holding on to something that, like, is unnecessary, right? Like, let's just keep moving forward.